In this segment, I'm going to show how to use the rectangle selection tool, and that's found here on the left-hand toolbar. But before I can do that, I need to start by, I guess in this case, I'm just going to choose to open an embroidery design. And the folder that's come open is the Creative Monogram samples. These are designs that I guess were installed with the software. And I found those by looking, first of all, under Trevor, which is sort of for my computer, and then under Public and Public Documents. That's where I found this folder called Creative Monogram Samples. And inside of that folder there was just a few designs in the draw format. And I'm going to go ahead and open up one of them. Okay, so now the design is open and available on my screen. What I wanted to show is how to use the rectangular selection tool. So this is the tool here at the top of my editing and selecting toolbar. And I guess first of all I can show that if I just simply mouse over the areas of the design, areas get highlighted. And lets me see, I guess, that this is actually all one item or one object, this whole, I guess, little design. And if I click on it, it becomes selected. And if I come over here and click on this one, then that becomes selected and the other object becomes unselected. Now, it's possible to select multiple objects. So as an example, I'm just going to zoom out by scrolling down on my mouse. And then I'll click on my workspace and drag. And as I drag over this area, see how as soon as I made my box go around that entire item, it becomes, I guess, highlighted. And if I keep going with my selection box and cover both of those two bottom objects or items, then they both became highlighted. And if I let go with my box right now, I've now selected two parts of this design. I can just, maybe I'll just show how I can click and drag to move them to a new location on my screen. So the idea, and if I want to let go of an object, I'll just click on the workspace and it's no longer selected. So I was able to select multiple objects by dragging a box. Now I can also select multiple objects by, I'm going to select this one by just clicking on it. Now I'm going to hold the control key down on my keyboard and I'm going to click on this one and see it added to the selection, and I'm going to come up here and click on this one and it added to the selection. So I have 3 of the 4 corner designs selected at the moment, and if I wanted to, anytime something's selected, you can move it or resize it or reshape it. And so I'll go through all of the different types of editing that are capable of being done using the transform tool, but that's how you can use it to select different things. So you either click to select something or you click and drag. And notice when I click and drag, if I don't fully encompass the shape, it doesn't get selected. Only once it's fully encompassed does it get selected. And same thing, I can have half of the lettering selected and half of this bottom corner selected, but until I get either all of the lettering selected or all of that bottom corner selected, they don't become selected. So you have to fully surround something when you're doing click and drag to select. Now, once I have something selected, if I want to, I could, for example, resize it. I'll just click off. I'm just going to click on one of these items and then zoom a little closer and show, I guess first thing I can do is move the location. And whenever you have something selected, you'll see several different ways that your mouse is going to appear. If I mouse over top of the area and I see these little multi-directional arrow of my mouse right now, that says click and drag to move it to wherever I want it to go. So that's relocating an object or moving an object, I guess. Now, there's other options. For example, I'm going to zoom in more closely over a corner and show that if I mouse up to the corner, I get the rotation handle. And if I mouse a little bit further towards the corner, I get a bidirectional arrow. So 2 different options. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just show the difference. So if I go over top of the corner and I get the rotation handle, I can rotate this object to be any degree that I want. And when you're rotating, there's a point here in the center that I can find and see that's what it looks like. And if I move that point, so I'm going to zoom out, and I'll move that point to be, let's say, here. That is the rotation axis. And so now if I come to my rotation handle, I can rotate the design around a new access point. And as soon as I do, it returns the axis point to the center. So if I want to rotate around this point, I just move it there, and then you can rotate around any angle that you want, around any point that you want. Now, if I mouse up to the corner and then keep going past the rotation to the center of the corner, I get the bidirectional arrows. That's for resizing. I can click and drag to make it smaller, or click and drag to make it bigger. So the corner handle has bidirectional arrows for sizing and rotation handles for changing the rotation. Now in the centers, we have an similar concept where if we go right to the center, we get a bidirectional arrow, but in this case, I'm going to stretch or squish the shape. And if I mouse up to it, I get this unique looking arrow, and this is for slant, sort of like italicizing the object. So I can change the stretch or squish of it, and I can change the slant of it. Now I guess maybe it's getting a little confusing because my object's been modified so many times, but that's the concept, that you have really four main ways to modify it. So you can rotate something, you can resize something, you can stretch or squish something, and you can change the slant of something. Those are different ways that you can modify an object using the transform selection tool. And of course, you can select one object by clicking on it, or multiple objects by dragging a box around them, and then your edits become on multiple objects and not just the one object. So that's the transform tool, and how you can use the transform tool to modify the position, size, and shape of your embroidery objects. I was just reviewing my segment on the selection tool, and before I move on, I realized there was something else that I wanted to show. The selection tool actually has two options. There's rectangle selection, but you'll notice on this tool that there's a small triangle on the toolbar. And that triangle means that there's more than one tool option available, and if I just click and hold over the tool, it'll fly open to show me that there's actually two selection tools. We've got rectangle selection. We also have the lasso selection. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the lasso selection. Now, very similar to the rectangle selection tool. The only difference is, instead of, I can still, I guess, click to select something. But if you wanted to, instead of clicking and dragging a box like we did with the rectangle selection tool, now you can click and draw a box. And so you have the ability to draw any kind of shape that you want. So it makes it easier to select sort of intricate shapes. Like, for example, if I wanted to, I could go around this shape, but then specifically make sure that I miss the ABC, go around that shape, and come around the other ABC, then coming this direction and around this direction. And so I was able to select three objects without selecting these other two by using the lasso selection box. So it's very much similar to the rectangle selection. The only difference is, if you want to define the shape, you have to click and drag to create the selection. So I'll try that again to get those letters. See, I can just select the letters. So, so you have two options actually: the lasso selection and the rectangle selection.